Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 7, Episode 12 of OurScoop.com's podcast. I'm John DiCarlo, and we have a full house. Again, Kyle Gauss, Sam Cohn, Dante Collinelli. What's going on, guys?
Number 12. Do you know what that means, John?
The Ken Stabler episode.
Not even close.
The Terry Bradshaw episode.
Drew Henson.
You guys are doing horrible with this.
I actually don't even know what Drew Henson were.
It's the Tom Brady episode.
Thank you, Dante. I thought
I'm
John was
just
going to open the
waiting.
show.
I know.
We clearly knew what it was. Yes.
Clearly what it was.
I was under the impression when I opened the doc and saw that it was episode 12 that John was going to open the show by quizzing me. And that if I got it wrong, that would obviously be very embarrassing. So
Drew Henson wore number 12 for the Lions, so that's actually pretty good for me.
Yeah. Proud of you, Kyle.
Yeah. Do you know who Drew Henson is?
Yeah.
Who is
Do you
he?
actually?
No.
He's the
No,
quarterback that played at Michigan that Brady could never beat.
Oh.
He later then played for the Yankees, and he came back to play with the Cowboys and the Lions.
I was going to say, it sounds familiar, but I could not have guessed that.
Sam was ever being interrogated, he would just be terrible. He would just
No.
be the
There's
worst.
no
What would I be interrogated about?
I don't know. You kind of do look like you're in an interrogation room right now. I know you're in the WHIP studio, but with like the soundproofing, the soundproof foam in the background. I know you look like you're in some sort of interrogation room.
If I turn the lights off and get like a lamp, like a dimly lit lamp, and put it right on my face.
Sure.
It's like a 1950s noir. Like, what is this?
Smoking a cigarette.
Stereotypical interrogation room.
Yes. Yeah. Well, maybe if we were, did Sam just put this in the doc? Where is my Zoom link?
I did.
That
okay.
was
45 minutes ago.
Hey, we should pay tribute to Dante here. He and the Temple News staff were very thoughtful. They baked me a cake for being at Temple as the student media director here for 20 years. So that's why we're delayed. Kyle's not impressed. He's rolling his eyes.
It has nothing to do with your 20th anniversary. Congratulations.
It's not.
My anger has nothing to do with that. I was in a great mood 37 minutes ago. The Braves won game 1. Everything's great. And now here we are.
Braves in 6.
Braves in 4, hopefully, because they lost their game 1 start.
How do you feel about the fact that they were like just climbing over the 500 mark in August and now they're going to win a World Series? That's pretty incredible.
Why would I care about the journey? I care about the result. Like the fact that they were almost
them. I'm saying that's pretty cool.
They're the only team in the division that has a competent front office. So it all worked out fine.
Yeah.
They bet that one of the 4 outfielders that they acquired at the deadline was going to hit. They all hit. Here we are.
In an alternate universe where the Red Sox get past the Astros, does this become a baseball podcast if the Red Sox and Braves are playing in the World Series?
I'd feel better about the Braves odds if they were playing the Red Sox, but here we are.
Touche.
No, I kind of envisioned that. I said, like, well, if they both get there, then like there's the storyline of like Kyle parading Sam. There's the Boston Braves, now the Atlanta Braves, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. And now I got to beat up some cheating team from southeastern Texas.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Speaking of beating up.
Yeah.
Football.
Wow.
Nice.
Got manhandled by USF 34-14. Where to begin on that one? So we'll briefly review the carnage of the USF loss, preview Saturday's game against UCF, talk a little hoops, but we'll got a short clip here from Alex Odom talking about, just the missed tackles, all the stuff that went wrong against the Bulls. And I got a pretty, this will be a mailbag heavy episode. We have a lot of mailbag questions. People have questions, grievances, everything in between. So, I led with this in my story, but it was pretty apt, pretty appropriate. William Kwenku said on at least 4 different occasions, we got our ass kicked. And he was right. you had 2 weeks as a staff, if you're Temple, to prepare for this. And pretty dreadful loss. Don't get it. Don't understand. Well, I do understand how it got that bad, but again, it was just sloppy preparation, missed tackles. Fans are irate, rightfully so. But yeah, now Temple falls to 3-4 after 7 games. I think all of us have predicted a win, or most of us have predicted a win, but this was.
I would have predicted a loss if I was on. Just saying.
Yeah. Why would you predict
Temple going down to Florida? They've won like 2 games there in the last 85 years.
Yep.
I would have predicted a loss.
Yeah.
Not that fashion though.
Yeah, but again, we've said this seemingly several times this season. It's how are they winning? How are they losing? And to get gutted as much as they did. So Temple allows 526 yards of total offense and 421 rushing yards. USF won the time of possession battle 44-35 to 15-25, which is kind of unheard of. Temple ran just 34 plays as a result. USF runs 94 plays. Alex Odom and Jalen Ware both played 91 of those 94 snaps. Again, the safety room is a little shorthanded. Amir Tyler is out. We believe it's a hand injury. He put something on social media. They're calling it an upper body thing. We know that they've been without Deshaun Winston. Here is Alex Odom talking about, as I mentioned before, you're going to hear him say here that USF wasn't doing anything special, and it kind of just goes back to that theme of USF taking it to him. So here's Alex Odom talking about Saturday night's mess.
It was just making tackles. That's all it was. Like, we were getting a lot of opportunities to make plays, which we did. We made majority, but it's just some of the plays where we had a chance to miss tackles. But it was nothing. They weren't doing anything too special. They were just playing physical. They were more physical than us, so we just had to play more physical. That's all. All
right. So I feel like we've gone up and down with this team. Not that Temple has had any sort of like emphatic season-defining win. Again, they've beaten Akron, they've beaten Wagner, they did beat Memphis. Maybe this isn't the Memphis program that it was last year, a couple of years ago, but this is a bad sign. I know that I'm not breaking any news here, but again, to have 2 weeks to prepare for that game and to get gutted that badly. Rod Carey was in a foul mood, understandably so. I know it's the obvious question, but what did you guys make of what we saw Saturday night?
I don't get why people are so pissed off. It was a record-setting night. 4th most rushing yards ever allowed in the FBS era by Temple. Fewest offensive plays ever in a game by a Temple team. Most time of possession ever by an opponent with 44 minutes and 35 seconds. They set a lot of records. The scoreboard was a slot machine on Saturday. No, I mean, it was one of the more, I guess I would say, disheartening or demoralizing losses in recent memory for Temple football. Even there's been blowout losses before, right? Like even 2019 when they went 8-4 in the regular season, there were blowout losses to UCF. This was bad because consider who the opponent was. I mean, South Florida was arguably, before the week, you could have made the argument that they were the worst team in the conference. And now you might be able to make the argument that Memphis is the worst team in the conference, considering how bad Temple looked against South Florida and how bad Memphis looked against Temple. I'm pretty sure my watch is going off right now with a text message from John that I'm just not going to look at. So instead, nope, never mind.
No, I'm not.
I saw a smirk and I saw text message.
Step off.
Smirk was warranted. So yeah, I mean, I think this is. I feel like a couple weeks ago we said this is a crossroad game for the season, but whether or not if you win this, you have a chance at the bowl. The next couple of weeks might be a crossroad games for the future of this program. I think the way whether or not they win any more games going down the road or they win this week against UCF, I think is less consequential than how they actually look in it, because they looked unprepared. They looked like they quit in the second half, which they've done in a lot of games this year. And they looked like they lacked in fundamentals. I mean, how many missed tackles were there? 15.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty disheartening.
Dante, Sam, your thoughts?
Go ahead, Sam. I didn't cover the game live, so I feel like I should probably go last on this one.
Oh, that's okay.
Dante was on a spirit hike. He was out doing peyote in the desert.
I was cleansing. I needed a cleanse of Temple football. That's what I needed.
One I guess, for lack of a better word, takeaway I had from this game, or I guess like post-game thought, was the beginning of the season. A lot of what we talked about, both on this podcast and just generally, was that the thought was probably that the offense was going to be ahead of the defense in terms of like ability to perform throughout the season. And for the first, before excluding the Cincinnati game, I think, but probably up until the Cincinnati game, in a lot of ways, the defense had outperformed the offense, whether you attribute that to Dewan Mathis's injury or various injuries on offense, or just the defense playing better than I think a lot of us expected. Wasn't a huge sample size for the offense. They had a 2 possession. I mean, there was the 1 possession where it was 1 play for a 70-yard touchdown, which was about as good as as much as you can ask for. And then there was the other touchdown possession where they really just drove the ball down the field. Other than that, on 34 plays, like, the offense was okay, but they were much better than the defense, and the defense was just really atrocious. So I think it was like flopped from kind of, or I guess in line with what we thought was going to happen with a relatively inexperienced defense. They were extremely depleted in their secondary, playing without Amir Tyler, without Deshaun Winston. MJ Griffin got hurt in the South Florida game. Keyshawn Paul got hurt in the South Florida game. So their secondary was extremely depleted, and their 2 leading tacklers have been safeties. So without those 2 guys, their 7 up front have not been anything special, and their secondary was really depleted. So they weren't able to really do anything defensively.
Dante, I know you saw maybe part of the game, didn't get to see the whole thing, but I mean, there were times, I think, when they did bring an extra lineman down than people give him credit for, but still, just this is the exact opposite of what Temple fans would have hoped for. Temple needed to get its run game going. Obviously got nothing going when you possess the ball for less than 16 minutes, which is kind of ridiculous. But USF did to Temple what Temple was hoping to do to USF. Bad defense, get the run game going, and instead Temple got it on the other end. I know it's a popular thing to talk about and debate after games when it comes to adjustments, but when a team is getting gutted and gutted and gutted like that, are you at all ever surprised when a team is slow to make adjustments? Do you think it was a lack of adjustments, or do you think, I'd throw this at to Dante or anybody who wants to tackle this one, do you think adjustments would have mattered on a night when the tackling was so sloppy and the execution was so sloppy? And again, it's another popular thing to say, but yeah, I'll agree with Kyle. It looked like they quit.
I think it would have mattered. It kind of surprised me that they even came out in the 3-3-5 to start that game, because, like, here's the thing about South Florida, right? You look at the numbers, you watch the film, like, man, Timmy McClain ain't going to go out there and throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns on you. Like, leave the corners on islands, stack the box. The only reason that they're going to beat you is if they run it down your throat, they control the ball, and, you can't stop them in the running game. And, like, I get it, right? Like, the 3-3-5 is modern. That's probably where defense is going. Like, I get it. Like, I understand why that is the model. I understand why more teams are doing that. If you're playing Central Florida, if you're playing SMU, these teams that really like to air it out, sure, go for it, have at it. But, you're playing a team like South Florida. They've beat an FBS opponent in 2 years or whatever the heck it is. They got 1 running back with 200 yards and 10 touchdowns. Their quarterback has 2 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions this year. He's at the bottom of the conference in yards. They're not going to throw the ball around the yard on you. They're not. The only way they're going to move the ball consistently against you is in the running game. So, again, like, all right, you want to come out in the 3-3-5 and just show them that for the first drive or the first quarter, wherever the heck it ends up being, go for it. Knock yourself out. But, like, you can't – what did they make that change in, like, the fourth quarter is when we saw the first time they put 4 down linemen? Like, man, that's late. I don't know if it – maybe it doesn't make a difference because they're not good tacklers and they're not good in their fits. Maybe it doesn't matter, but, like, you have to try, and like, that's got to be a game plan thing. That's really the problem for me, right? Is, like, I'm not even a scheme guy, right? Like, when I scout, like, I'm looking for traits. I'm not a scheme guy. If I can sit up here and be like, you had 2 weeks to prepare for this team, the only way they beat you is if they run it down your throat and you come out in the 3-3-5 for 3 quarters. Like, I don't know what we're doing. Like, that's like, what, like, how did that not, like, how was that conversation not had in 14 days? That's my question. So, yeah, I think adjustments would have made a huge difference in this game, even with people out, even with missed tackles. I think just having more people there just would have aided you. Like, make Timmy McClain throw the ball over the top. And when they brought in the backup quarterback, same thing. That guy's not going to beat you over the top that much. Like, trust your secondary, which has been good this year, and try and stack the box and stop the run. And so I don't know why they didn't do that, honestly.
And we're in the territory now where fans say, ask the tough questions, ask the tough questions, and you do. But I think, I don't know, maybe we could hear something different this week if they lose again and lose to UCF. But it's the standard thing. You hear the players saying, no, the game plan was good, we didn't execute it. And then the coaches will say, oh, we got to put them in a better position. Nobody wants to throw each other under the bus, which is, players and coaches trying to protect themselves. But again, we know that things obviously don't look good and aren't looking good right now. So if we turn our attention to this UCF team, they're coming off a 24-7 win over Memphis. They're 4-3 overall, 2-2 in the American Athletic Conference, but they have not won on the road yet this season. So in terms of injury updates, Keyshawn Paul, Amir Tyler, MJ Griffin are all up in the air this week in terms of their status with their injuries. Obviously, if all three of those guys don't play, look, I mean, they're without, UCF has had to, scrounge together and use 2 or 3 different quarterbacks. They don't have Dylan Gabriel this season. They're not gonna have him Saturday, but still losing that much from your secondary would obviously hurt. Dante, you're handling the preview for us again this week. What do you think of this UCF team? Again, not the powerhouse program, powerhouse team that we're accustomed to, but again, you can't take anything for granted now with Temple. I don't think they're unbeatable by any means, but after what we saw last week, they've got a lot of work cut out for them. What's Temple going to be seeing in this team?
Yeah, I think you did a really good job covering it, right? When I was going through and watching some of the games, going through some of the stats, like this is not the UCF that we've seen the past couple of years where they're just this ultra explosive. No matter how good they play, they're going to put up 40. That's just not this team. They have very much, since Dylan Gabriel's gone out, they've very much transitioned to be like a ground and pound team. They still run the tempo. They still try and, stretch you horizontally with bubble screens and stuff like that. Like, they still have the old basis of the UCF offense, but they're just quite not that explosive. I don't know if that's the quarterback, different receivers, but they're going to see, I think, just a solid football team all around. I don't think UCF is particularly bad at anything. I also don't think that they're particularly great at anything. Wide receiver room is pretty solid. They've got a speed guy. They got a taller guy. They got kind of an in-between guy. It's like O'Keefe, Robinson, and then their taller guy. He's got like 7 touchdowns already this year. You look at their running backs, it's a 2-man duo there. They kind of like to split those carries like Temple wanted to do. They have Isaiah Bowser, Johnny Richardson. Both those guys are solid. On defense, their pass defense isn't too bad. Their run defense is like okay. Bryson Armstrong, the linebacker, Tatum Buthain, the other linebacker, those guys are okay. They've got some nice young corners that have some good numbers. So like, all around, I think like this is a very average Knights team. I think that Temple can come in. I think that they can score against this team. I think that they can stop this team on defense. The only problem, and I wrote this in the preview when you guys read it on Saturday morning, is like, I just don't have any faith in them given what we saw against South Florida. It's like, like I wrote in the preview, it's like they should be able to run on this defense, but like, South Florida had the worst rush defense in the American, and that rush defense is one of the worst in the country too. It's like, I don't have any faith in them. If they can't run against South Florida, I mean, there's nothing that makes me think they'll be able to run against Central Florida. So I don't know. This is a very average team. This is a winnable football game, but I don't have a lot of faith in Temple.
Kyle, Sam?
Agreed. I think in certain ways Temple just needs to completely sell out and try to stop the run in this game to have any chance. I don't have any fear of Mikey Keene whatsoever. He's a freshman quarterback, even with his stats, all of his throws are behind the line of scrimmage. He very rarely goes deep. I know they're hoping to get Jalen Robinson back this week, the Oklahoma transfer, who's been pretty productive, but he's been pretty productive when Dylan Gabriel's throwing to him. I think if you see Temple come out in the exact same formation or in the exact same summer scheme they did for the first 3 quarters against USF, then the writing's on the wall with this season, this coaching staff, and the immediate future of this program. Because they needed to win one of these games, whether it's UCF or USF, to have like a realistic shot at winning a bowl. East Carolina's a lot better than they were last year. Houston looks like they finally righted their ship. They need to somehow win this game and then hope that they can beat Tulsa and Navy to get to 6-6. But like Dante said, I have very little faith in their ability to do that at this point.
Prediction time.
Well, Sam, I think, had contributions to the conversation.
Mix your contributions into your prediction.
I wasn't going to add anything groundbreaking, but my contribution was going to segue into predictions that I would just kind of echo what Dante said, that UCF is very much a winnable football game for Temple, but based on their performance against South Florida, don't have a ton of confidence. And if they don't have Keyshawn Paul, if they don't have Amir Tyler, if they don't have MJ Griffin, if they still don't have Deshaun Winston, if they're still really that depleted on the defensive side of the ball, it's hard to imagine them performing better against a better team this weekend than they did this past weekend when they were at full health, especially, I guess, more so to start the South Florida game. My prediction, I'll take UCF 34, Temple 21. No, yeah, Temple 21.
Kyle, Dante, go ahead, Kyle.
Sure. I don't think UCF's going to make as much of a deliberate effort to kind of milk clock. I think they're just going to run their offense, which Dante said time, like they will still go tempo. So I don't think you're going to see something drastic like Temple only having the ball for 14 minutes and 35 plays again. I just kind of get the feeling that UCF's going to pound it down their throat on this one. You'll see at the end that they have 250, 270 rushing yards. You'll go, well, this game was never really that close. I'm going to say UCF 31, Temple 10. Actually, no. I think Temple's offense can score more points than that. I'll say UCF 31, Temple 17.
I got it 31-20. So we're all in the same ballpark. I don't really have anything else to add for analysis. I just think I don't have any faith that Temple's going to put up a fight against the run this week.
Next intern we hire, we should just be like, hey, your job is to go back and listen to all the scoops and determine who's like what's the most commonly predicted score, whether or not anybody's ever actually accurate, because we never hold each other accountable. There's not like a record at the bottom like Kyle's 1-6 in predictions this year. It's never that. I'm
just so curious if any of us have ever been right. Like
I never read about Memphis.
Now. Were you? Because if I'm being completely honest, we record on Wednesday. I forget my own prediction by Thursday, and I don't remember anyone else's prediction. So by the time the weekend rolls around, I don't. We should start writing these down.
The one thing John's good about, considering he has, like 17 different podcasts at this point, is like he'll say, hey, I predicted this, so I'm going to stay true to that. For me, whenever I have to do like a spot on something else, I immediately forget what my prediction was before. So like every prediction is just like, I'm just going with what my gut feels like at that moment.
John does a Temple football media tour from Tuesday to Friday. Really after Rod Carey speaks on Monday and after the weekend, Tuesday to Friday, it's just a media tour.
It's 2 podcasts, not 20.
2 podcasts, the Pat Egan show,
the Pat Egan appearance, the new podcast with Adam DeMichael, the Believe in Temple Football podcast. We're scheduled to talk to PJ Walker tonight, so
whatever WHIP or Al's update show once you on that week. I'd say there's like an average of like 3.5 spots a week, which is good. You're in demand.
I think I'm feeling like a 28-20 game. I mean, again, this isn't anything obvious, but if Keyshawn Paul, I mean, at corner, if he's out, Amir Tyler was out last week, and again, even if he had played, I don't know that makes a huge difference, but if a guy like MJ Griffin's out, I mean, not only do they get gutted in the run, but I think some of these 25, 30-yard runs, like if you don't have good safeties back there, these become long touchdown runs too, because they're again, you really don't want your safeties being your leading tacklers. Again, give Alex Odom credit for playing 91 snaps and Jalen Ware playing 91 snaps. I think Odom is a player to be excited about for the future, but yeah, you don't want your safeties being your leading tacklers, but if it's Odom back there and a ton of backups at safety, I think a lot of these runs could turn into ones that just end in the end zone. So I'm feeling 28-20. We'll see. Real quick.
Has there ever been a time when Rod Carey has said that somebody's day-to-day and they actually played? Anytime he says somebody's day-to-day, it usually means they're not playing.
I feel like he definitely has.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Jaden, well, no, because he'll have a caveat. Like Jaden Blue was day-to-day and played, but he'll say like is progressing. I mean, he did say Michael Neese was progressing really well and like ahead of schedule, but there's definitely I think Jaden Blue is the first one that comes to mind where I thought he said day-to-day that week and he still played.
I'm not faulting him. Like I think for as far as injuries go, he's pretty forthcoming. I just feel like day-to-day is kind of his like it's 25-75 that they're going to play.
He also usually just like doesn't know on Mondays
which is fair because I mean those like there's a reason these things used to be on like Tuesdays, like because then they have a chance people to come in on Monday and get treatment and they get updates. But here we are.
Which is just eats at Dante. Wants these pressers to be on Tuesday.
I complain about it every week. Every time I see John on Tuesday, I complain about it.
Yes,
you're not wrong. Like it makes no sense. It should be Tuesday. It should be mediocre Qdoba food. This is the new norm.
Qdoba Tuesdays, yeah. All right, let's. This is pretty mailbag heavy pod here. We'll start with basketball. We've got some basketball questions here. So We'll start with these are again from our owlscoop.com message boards. These first three here are first four here, I'm sorry, are from the basketball message board. First one is from the screen name What to You. John Rothstein costs $100 on Cameo. Is the Owl Scoop team willing to dish up the money and have him tell Arthur Johnson best of luck in the American and hope the football team has a good rest of the season?
That'd be evil.
I'll pay for it and then do the credit card reverse payment where you like contest the charge. And you say like, whoa, this wasn't me. Like I didn't do this. John Rothstein and I have
before?
Never for anything like that. I've done that from like when I've had like my wallet stolen and stuff like that. But you always have the ability to contest a charge.
Yeah.
That's called fraud, is what I just described. So no, I won't actually be doing that. John Rothstein and I have not been seeing eye to eye lately.
I think we can all say that, right? He's
Kyle and John 1v1. Sorry, Kyle and John Rothstein 1v1.
To be honest, I kind of want him to block me. Like that would be like a good sign for me, because like I'm not trying to just like troll him. I like just vehemently disagree with what he's saying, and I think what he's saying is just so blowhardish, where like he's just romanticizing like go back to the 90s and play these regional teams and all that. That's the reason that Temple hasn't won in basketball lately, when that is not the case. Like if Temple was going 25-5 every year and missing the tournament because they're playing Tulsa, that'd be one thing. Guess what? They're not. They won 5-6 games last year in this conference. The conference is not the problem. They need to play better is the problem.
I said this on our message board yesterday, and this is, I mean, it's not anything that Kyle hasn't said and other people haven't said, but I mean, I said, stick with me on this. I said, Temple needs to be Gonzaga on this. I mean, the West Coast Conference has never been more than a 3-bid league on two occasions that happened in 2007, 2008, and 2011, 2012. They need to go out. Even if Memphis eventually gets scooped by the Big 12, the only feasible solution here is stay in the American, win as much as you can, earn as much money as you can. Even if ESPN comes back and renegotiates the deal and says, we want to redo this. And even if you're getting $3.5-4 million as opposed to $7 million, it's still worth it. You can still schedule St. Joe's. You can still schedule LaSalle. As Kyle has said, why would you jump from 1, 2, or 3 bid league at the most to another one and lose a lot of money, have less TV visibility? And if honestly, and this is going to sound stronger than I mean it to sound, but like, if Aaron McGee is really truly a disciple of John Chaney, go back to the we'll play anyone, anywhere, at any time thing. Maybe lead off your season with Maryland Eastern Shore, go out, play Michigan State, play Duke, play Kansas, play Kentucky, beat the crap out of your team, get them battle tested, run through your league, and go back to the tournament and be prepared to play much better in March. And that's how you have to play it. There's nothing you can do right now that's going to make this better other than, as Kyle said, win as much as you can, clean up your own house, continue to recruit better, develop. And again, we'll see what happens. They have to be better this year. If they're not better this year, we got a real problem. But all of these just hackneyed, the demise of Temple basketball has begun. I don't know if somebody's gassing him up on this, if he's trying to advance somebody's agenda. If he is, it's not working. It's just exhausting. But, that's just kind of what John does. Either that or his other thing is a recruit will announce his decision, and then 30 minutes later he'll say per sources player X is committed to school Y. So I don't know. Full disclosure, I've never met John Rothstein. Might be the nicest guy in the world, but I'm just sick of it.
I've met him.
What?
I think I've met him. I think I've met him at Temple games before.
Really?
I that aura to him.
It's just, I don't know. Just
I don't like anybody, and like I really don't like this opinion. So
the next question from the message board comes from Park Al. Pretend I'm a soothsayer, and I tell you, I like this question. Pretend I'm a soothsayer, and I tell you Temple is a 10 seed in the 2022 NCAA tournament. What's one player prediction for this upcoming year you're confident making with that info? So in other words, like they get to the tournament, which player has like a breakthrough, like super important season to get them to that point? We'll go to Sam on this. Sam loves his hoops, and then we'll go around the horn here to Kyle and Dante and finish up with me.
Full disclosure, I don't know what a soothsayer is, but I'm assuming
like a psychic. Like I'm imagining like there's like an orb in front of them. And, crystal ball.
We're gonna send you to like a key terms and key numbers clinic. where it's like, I don't, this oxygen thing, what is it?
Teach you key terms. I'm going to teach you events that happened prior to like 2006. And then
That's probably a more.
I feel like Austin
class.
Powers.
Like when the office got like put on TV is like the BCAD moment for Sam. Anything before that, it's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, because I spent all of my time watching The Office. Anyway, that's not the point of the question. What's one player prediction? Blah, blah, blah. I think if Temple is a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament and we're picking one player that makes that jump from within this coming year to the following year. I guess the 2022 would be this season. Sorry. I think it's Julio White. I don't think Julio White's a starter on day one. I don't think right now, I don't think he is. I think just the way the rotation is working on game one, he's probably not there. I think that he sees minutes. I think he's one of the first guys off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised at all if by conference play, if he is all he's chalked up to be, then he's probably in the starting rotation and he could be a legitimate force on this Temple team.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think we have another question about Julio White in a little bit. But I'll just, to be different, I've said this before, I think the future of this program for the next couple of years is based on the ability of Caliph Battle and Damian Dunn to coexist in the same backcourt. So like if you're telling me that, hey, they are number 10 seed in the tournament, it means they either went on like a run and won the conference, or hey, they won 22 games and got at large. I think it's because those two who are both talented in their own ways really meshed together and became a pretty dominant backcourt in this conference.
Dante?
I'll take Sam's favorite player, Nick Jourdain. If he has a big year, he can kind of be that. He's like a more of a stretch four type guy, right? So like if he can come out and help them space the floor, I think that would be huge and kind of help them win a couple more games.
I'm gonna go with Emmanuel Okpomo. I think if he is a good contributor for you this year, it means that like they just don't have. I mean, we've said this a bunch. They have not rebounded well. They've had to rely on guys like Caliph Battle, guys like Napier Louis. They have not had a great rebounder, a great rim protector. And again, I'm not saying that Okpomo is going to come in and average a double-double every night, but if he can make enough of an impact for them, he allows Jake Forrester to do things and play differently. I think Jimmy Fennerty talked about that a little bit. I think if he contributes off the bench and he gives you a spark and you don't just get just dominated on the boards, not to say that they do every night, but if he can be a guy that can help you compete against Houston, help you compete against Memphis, help you steal a non-conference game and make enough of a presence in the paint, I think that will go a long, long way for him. Because how many times have we covered Temple games where like they need a stop, they need a rebound, and the ball gets knocked around 3 or 4 times, whoever they're playing against, Team X gets to bring the ball back out, take more of the clock off. And I think if he actually makes a significant impact, meaning, grabbing 5 or 6 boards here and there, blocking a couple of shots, I think it really kind of opens things up for them defensively. Guys can take more chances on the perimeter. So but I like that question. Good thought-provoking question there. Next question here comes from the screen name Melly. This is the Julio White question that Kyle was referring to. Julio White is largely an unknown to the Temple fan base. Can you give a hint on what to expect from him and the roles he, Hicks, and Miller will play? Sam, you wrote a pretty good story on Julio White for the Inquirer. You've been looking at him, talking to him, studying his game. What can Temple fans expect from Julio White? And then what do you see for the roles of Zach Hicks and Hysier Miller?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, I think, on the pod, but just to kind of expound upon it, in talking to Chris Clark about what Julio White's going to look like, what any of us can even expect from what he's going to do on the floor, I think we asked Jimmy Fennerty a very similar question of kind of what does his game look like? And the answer is like kind of a lot. Not a lot in the sense that he's going to be this like, they have high expectations for him, but not a lot in the sense that he's just going to be here one season and like go to the NBA or anything, but a lot in terms of like he can do a lot of different things on the floor and they can use him in a lot of different ways. One thing Chris Clark talked about is, he could play the forward in a small ball lineup. He could play the 4 or maybe even the 5 in a small ball lineup. And when guys, Justin Gorham's no longer with Houston, but a guy like Justin Gorham would be forced to defend Jaleel. And when Julio White steps out to the 3-point line, he's pulling one of the best rebounders in the American from last season away from the rim. Someone like Jeremiah Davenport from Cincinnati, similar thing where he's pulling defenders away from the basket and he's drawing a lot of attention. in a different lineup where Jake Forrester's in the game and maybe Sage Tolbert or Nick Jourdain are both in the game, Jaleel can then play like the 2, maybe even have the ball in his hands at the 1 in certain situations. So it's that Julio White can kind of be a real plug and play guy for them, where he can just fit in with different lineups and in different ways. And I think that'll be a really interesting thing. His jump shot is not, I'd probably say he's not even top 3, top 4 shooters on the team. I could probably say that confidently, actually. He's probably not a top 5 shooter on the team, but it's something he's been improving on. He's really a really competitive defender. Jimmy Fennery told us that story. Was that last week or the week before, about how competitive he's been on the floor in practice. And I think it was Chris that told me a couple weeks ago that he can defend. He likes going at it with Jake and with Sage in the post. He likes defending those guys. That's the part of the game that he really enjoys doing. So I'm curious to see where his offensive game is at this level against these guys and in games within conference play. But it sounds like he could be a real plug and play guy that can fit in a lot of different lineups for them.
Give me the NBA comp. People love comps.
I'm pretty sure on this podcast we hate comps. Isn't that
I'm comping everybody?
An NBA comp. I don't have one off the top of my head. I'm gonna have to
Kyle Anderson.
think about it though.
Kyle Anderson is my comp.
Wow.
Magic Johnson. Just kidding. Kyle Anderson, who went to high school where?
Is he St. Patrick's?
Close.
St. Anthony.
St. Anthony. Yeah.
I didn't know he was from around here.
Yeah. I think I believe he visited a Temple game. I seem to remember interviewing him for something. I think I interviewed Karl Anthony Towns at Wells Fargo, and I think he was right after. Or maybe I'm confusing that.
Yeah.
But that's my comp.
He played with Josh Brown, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was that year.
What about an RJ Barrett?
Sure.
Yeah. Or Cam Reddish to an extent. We're just naming big point guards at this point. Yeah. Interesting. He's going to the NBA is what we're saying.
Julio White going to the NBA, one and done. What about Sam? What
He's
about
not one and done. He's already been here.
Well, one season and done. You I don't know. Hicks and Miller.
So quickly on the note of Zach Hicks and Hysier Miller, I believe it was Jimmy that said both of them have been more impressive than the two of them have been more impressive to a lot of the guys in the Temple program than I think anybody really expected, just in terms of the way they're picking up on stuff really quickly. I think I'm inclined to believe Zach Hicks might be quicker to establish a role in the lineup. Crowded backcourt, Zach Hicks might just be more ready. Hysier Miller, I think, very much is probably the heir to Jeremiah Williams' throne. I think playing under Jeremiah, I think those two are very similar people. I like very similar mindset / style. I think they play similarly, but obviously Jeremiah Williams has 4 inches on Hysier. Crowded backcourt, I think just Hysier is going to have a tougher time getting into that rotation, or finding minutes. I think Zach Hicks can be a real smaller than skinnier than Jaleel plug and play guy, maybe at at 2, 3, 4, because he has the size. The question is, where's his physicality at? The question with Quincy Adamakoya, who I think all of us were ready for him to be a legitimate piece in that rotation last year. It turns out he didn't come along to the physicality of the game, and he wasn't really ready. He wasn't there by the start of the middle of the season or whatever. I think depends where Zach Hicks is in that. He could be a legitimate piece off the bench, or a guy that gets 8 to 10 minutes in a game. I think the two of them are bright futures. I think this year Hicks probably sees a few more minutes than Miller, but I think Hysier probably sees minutes in that row, maybe out of the backcourt, and Hicks obviously plays the wing, but he's come off screens, pin down, create for himself kind of wing. One
follow-up question for you. We talked about this offline. We heard that Ty Strickland had a pretty good scrimmage against Georgetown. Again, just if you're not familiar with the stuff, we can't cover scrimmages. They're closed. Temple scrimmaged at Georgetown, I guess, beat them, whatever the scenario was. If they played a full game, if they played situational stuff, played pretty well against Georgetown. Not that Georgetown's expected to be a top tier Big East team this year, and then they're going to scrimmage Seton Hall this weekend. But we heard that the Ty played pretty well. Are we buying that? Maybe Ty's shoulder is fully healthy and that he could play some decent minutes and kind of slow Hysier Miller's entry into the lineup, or is that just, do you think that's a one-off scrimmage performance and Hysier Miller is just going to be the guy that is the first point guard off the bench?
Kyle, I want you to take it.
I hope that's the case. I hope Ty lives up to the October hype and they're able to, maybe redshirt Heisey or Miller. But until I see it in an actual game, I'm going to be hesitant. I mean, we saw this last year. Ty started the season fairly well. Like I remember he had he had a fair amount of run against NJIT. I just haven't seen it yet. So it's encouraging signs. And I think ideally if they had their druthers, they would like that because you can redshirt Heisey or you can kind of bring him along slowly and just be able to give the reins to him. I find it interesting. I agree with this, but it's funny that we say he's the heir to Jeremiah Williams's throne when they're the same class right now. They're both freshman point guards technically. So
that's true.
There's going to be a log jam at some point that will eventually have to work itself out, and being able to redshirt him would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
On the note of Ty, I would agree. I think, good for him if he figures it out this year, but I don't want to push any kind of narrative that he was just god awful last year.
Right.
He couldn't shoot the ball very well, whether that was a shoulder healing thing or a mental recovery thing. His jump shot wasn't there. And I think we had very much talked about on this podcast last year a good amount that he's getting those shots. He's creating for himself. He's still I fully admit I was very high on him coming in as a starting point guard at the start of last season. I thought he would be a really good piece in that backcourt just because of his handle on the ball, the way he can control that offense. And Jeremiah Williams exceeded what I thought Ty was going to be, which is fine. But I think Ty could come in and be maybe that first guard off the bench behind Jeremiah, Caliph, and Dame Dunn in that backcourt, whatever that position looks like. But he didn't get minutes because he couldn't put the ball in the hoop. He was still a solid defender at point guard. He was still able to create for himself. The question is, can he shoot? Can he finish? And if he can't do that, then, they're not going to play him. And I think that's what happened last year. Is he just couldn't. So the question is, mentally, where is he at? And physically, where is he at with his shoulder?
It's a long season. There's going to be a situation or an opportunity at some point for whether it's Ty or Heisey to have to play some really meaningful minutes. So
yes,
here's your opportunity, Ty.
Next question here, another basketball related question. The screen name is Vanter, VANTR. Who do you think the best player on the team will be this year? I feel strongly this team is being slept on and will finish top 4 in the American Athletic Conference. Where do you see Temple finishing after being projected 8th? So who's the best player on the team? Where do you see him finishing?
Best player on the team is a very good question. I want to say one or the other. This is probably cop out, but I'm going to say it's either going to be Caliph or Jeremiah. I think Jeremiah which he did and on most nights did a very thorough job of running Temple's offense and defending some of the best guards in the American. He was very poised. He was very mature for an 18/19, however old he is, year-old kid. In his first year of college basketball, he looked very, very solid. I think he takes a step up and he's a really legitimate contender for we thought he got snubbed for freshman rookie of the year in the American.
Didn't even make the team. Right. I thought he had a legitimate chance of winning freshman of the year. He didn't even make the team, which was dumb.
Yes. So I just to finish my point, I think it's Jeremiah or it's if Caliph does come out and Caliph Battle comes out and drops 23 in a game, averages 23 points per game, and starts to look like a young Shiz Alston, then maybe he kind of fights for that role. Fights that spot.
I love the fact you said that because I literally was just about to say that Caliph is going to be a 20-point game guy. I think Shiz Alston was the last person that you could kind of count on he's going to get you 20 points this game. I think it's going to be Caliph. I think with Jeremiah, you're going to probably, if you don't watch the games and you just look at the end of the season, you're going to say he regressed a little bit. I think it's because he's not going to be asked to score as much on this team. I think you're going to see him the way he averaged 9.5 a game last year. I think you could see that kind of go down a notch or two. And then instead you see more wing scoring and you see more to Caliph. So I'll say Caliph Bell.
Yeah, just to your point, Kyle, I think I wrote about this at one point last year that Jeremiah's season from start to finish, there's a clear trend of he was scoring the ball more. And then once Caliph was injected into the lineup with having Dame and Caliph, his scoring totals went down. He very much became more of a defense-focused, defense-oriented player and distributor. His assist totals went up and his point totals went down. It was just the way his game changed throughout the season. So, yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. If you just look at the box score, you'd say maybe he regressed. But I think it's more understanding his role on this team.
Dante, you have a a pick here?
I was going to say Caliph as well. I just think that he's a really good like spark plug scorer type guy. Like, he can finish, he can shoot from the outside. I agree with Kyle. I think he'll be like a 20 point per game guy.
Especially if he takes, I mean, it's the easy thing to cherry pick. But again, we said this heading into the season, his ball handling needs to improve. Everybody draws attention, rightfully so, to the turnover in the conference game. But I mean, if his ball handling improves even just a little bit, I think I've said this before. I am not saying he's going to be this type of player, but the way he can get a shot off quickly and the way he can shoot in streaks does remind me a little bit of Deontay Christmas, the way he can just boom, kind of just pop the ball off. I mean, if he's a guy that can really just, if he can focus on his ball handling and pick and choose his times when he's going to drive in, I think he can really, really, progress significantly. Standings wise, again, the team's predicted to finish 8th. Where do you guys see him finishing? I know it's pretty much useless to predict at this point, but it's fun. We'll do it. Where do you see him finishing?
I think they're higher than 8. I don't think they're a top 3, probably not even a top 4 team in the American, but I think they're very much a middle of the pack in the American team. I think if they exceed their expectations, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up 4 or 5. Maybe that's probably what an ideal season for this Temple team is finishing like 4, 5 in the conference. Expected is probably like 5, closer to that 5, 6, maybe 7 is probably expected, and anything below that is, I'm going to call it a failure of a season if they're below a 6, 7, if they're below a 7 seed.
Yeah, I think there's 3 pretty obvious tiers in this conference. I think Houston and Memphis are at their own level. I think SMU and Wichita State are pretty good, probably that second tier. And then I think, every other team is kind of in that junk level, not junk, but like that next level down. I agree. I think Temple could be the 4th, 5th, 6th best team in this conference. I think this season in general is going to have, if you're a Temple fan, you're not going to have as much of a sour taste in your mouth, just because I think you have a non-conference in this that you can kind of build some confidence, build some wins. Like they're opening up against Maryland Eastern Shore. Like you only had one of those games last year. You played the NJIT and that was your only like palate cleanser before you went into the conference play. So I think you'll see them be an above 500 team this year. And it wouldn't surprise me if, they're the 5th seed in the conference and you go, whoa, maybe if they win a game or 2 in the tournament, then they have a chance of doing X, Y, and Z. I'm expecting a fairly productive season.
And Dante is predicting Temple to win the league, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Best team in the American, obviously. No, I agree with you guys. I think they're like a middle of the pack team. I think that they can probably be like a 5 or a 6 seed this year. I think that obviously, like, I think Kyle said, like, you need to see that jump and play this year. Like that is like absolutely needed. But I think they'll get it. So I think this is like a middle of the pack team. I think 8's a little bit too low.
Look, if Georgetown won the Big East, anything's possible. So
there you go.
Exactly right. I'm gonna add one more thing before there you go. Before I go to class, and that's last year's Temple team had, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It was something like 4 or 5 games that they had finished games and lost by 6 points or less. They're a young team. It was a COVID-ridden season, whatever. And it was their first time, a lot of those guys' first time playing together, but they were in a lot of those conference games. A lot of those games came right down to the end. If another year under their belt helps them late in games, helps them finish games, they're still a young team. They're still going to be prone to mistakes. And by no means are they going to be perfect, but if they can cut down on games they should be winning at the end, but are losing, if they can cut down on those, I think that really turns the tide for this Temple team.
The stretch last year, 4 straight games, losses of less than 6 points, including 3 on the road. If they had just flipped those and they had been like 9 and 7, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty good for that team. It's like that squeezes them for that next step up. So I agree.
Yeah, I think if they can finish 5th and pull ahead of Cincy or UCF, then I think that's a pretty good step in the right direction. Sam has to leave for class, or do you want to stick around for the rest of the mailbag? Do you have time?
I do not. I have to walk to class. If I was online, I would stay for another.
I have to walk for class, as if he would otherwise be chauffeured to class or put on a scooter
or online
classes, like you said.
I know. It was a bit. You have to bring logic into it and ruin it. So anyway, thank you, Sam. Everybody. Happy to have you. Have fun in class. We do have a few more mailbag questions. to get to. A few more here, about 4 more left, or well, a few at the top of the list here. So we got one from Green Street Al is the screen name. Can you, the team, or anyone here give insights to college athletics budgets and university budgets overall? My question is related to Rod Carey's buyout or whatever we pay to move on after this year, specifically, and loss of pandemic revenue aside, haven't we quote unquote saved money from Dunphy being acting AD, as well as part of the salaries from those who President Wingard let go shortly after he started? I'm sure Temple is very slow to fill these roles regardless. Would a university pool money from other areas to contribute toward a high profile need like we have here? Well, look, I get the question. It would be ridiculous for us to, and kind of irresponsible for us to speculate and say that we know every line item of the university's budget.
But let's do it anyway.
Yeah, but the bottom line question here is, or the bottom line thing is, we don't yet know what the thinking is of Arthur Johnson as the new athletic director. More importantly, the thinking of Jason Wingard, Temple's new president. And so that the question is, would Temple pull the trigger on buying out Rod Carey after this season? I mean, that's a president's level decision, not just the athletic director. I'm not saying that to take power away from Arthur Johnson as the athletic director, but that's a president's level decision and a board of trustees level decision. I mean, you have to remember that the university did lose money during the pandemic. I don't know how much they quote unquote saved from Fran Dunphy being the acting AD. We don't know. We don't know line by line what's in the budget here, how much they would have to move around in certain lines to pull together money for Carey's buyout. But again, I think we'll know sooner rather than later what the thinking is. I mean, if they, I think if it was the same administration, I think Rod Carey comes back. I think with a new president, a new athletic director, I think it's at least on the table to talk about. Now, for me, they'd have to really turn things around. They'd have to go out and play tough, like go out, maybe finish with 7 or 8 wins. Am I expecting that? No, but we'd have to see a drastically different performance than what we saw Saturday night. But again, we'll know what the thinking is sooner rather than later. But I think there's more of a chance with this administration, but than the previous one to get to the heart of it. But to say we would know every single line item of the budget would be kind of ridiculous. But I think it's obviously, I know fans are thinking about it. A lot of fans want there to be a change. Maybe you get that with a new administration. I think it's at least out there with a new administration. But beyond that, we'll have to see what their thinking is.
Yeah, completely agree. And just kind of to cover our own asses a little bit, I think we've been pretty steadfast over the last 2 months whenever this question has come up, when we're like, hey, there's no 0% chance it's going to happen. Like, Temple's not doing this. I will say in the last 5 days, I've gone from 0% to there's a possibility. I don't think it's a probability, but I think there's a possibility. And I think this weekend's really going to help push that needle one way or the other. If they go out and they lose by 40 to UCF and it's just run down their throat and they look terrible, then all of a sudden you're 3-5, and then you could lose to ECU and you're 3-6, and you're going to lose to Houston, you're 3-7. And I agree. I think if this was a year ago and this was a COVID year and you still had Dick Englert and Fran Dunphy as the people making the decisions there, then I think they would have been fine. But I feel like the cards are always kind of stacked against you, regardless if you're a coach when there's a regime change. But athletic directors always want their own guy. Presidents always kind of want their own guy. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at this point, but traditionally Temple doesn't do things like this.
Dante, any thoughts on this?
No, nothing to add. I felt the same way that Kyle did, kind of after that game, because we've been, like Kyle said, very steadfast that that's not going to happen. And I really believe that way. And I was like, all right, maybe it was always next year was the year to really judge this staff and this roster and blah, blah, blah. But man, I mean, they cannot come out and get, shellacked like they did on Saturday night for the rest of the season. And I think this becomes a consideration. I'll put a 25% chance on it right now. That's where I'm at with it. It's still low, probably not going to happen. Like Kyle said, not probable, but it's higher than 0, which is where it was a couple weeks ago.
And I understand. So, since we last recorded, they lost a verbal commitment. Kyle Lewis from East Orange High School flipped from Temple to Pitt. if we're being fair and judicious here, look, it's not unusual for Temple to lose a verbal commit. It happens. Everybody sees the season that Kenny Pickett's having at Pitt. He was committed to Temple at one point, I think in April of his junior year, then flipped to Pitt not long after that, after his recruitment picked up. So this is commonplace. It can happen. But, what I think, what you could see that could exacerbate Rod Carey's exit would be if you start losing 3, 4, 5 guys from this class. If more guys start hitting the portal near the end of the year, then maybe Jason Wingard and Arthur Johnson say, like, this is slipping away from us. We have to have a competitive roster. This is bad. We didn't have the portal a few years ago. So we'll see. I'm with Kyle on that. Like Dante said a few weeks ago, we're saying, probably not. But, I think it's sort of intriguing and worth looking at.
Real quick with the Kyle Lewis thing, I know people are probably quick to be like, well, they got their ass kicked by USF, and then now that's why he decommitted. He told Panther Lair, which is the Pitt rival site, hey, I've known I'm going to be flipping to Pitt for a while now. He actually said he wanted to take an official visit to Pitt in June, couldn't figure it out, and his coaches told him, we'll just commit to Temple to lock up a spot. So now 4 months later, he's making the decision he wanted to make it. I think you can't really fault him. Like, Pitt has an outside chance of making the college football playoffs. Like, there's an outside chance. I don't think it's going to happen. There's an outside chance. Like, they're having a hell of a year. But that never felt like that strong of a commitment to me. And turns out it wasn't.
Yeah. All right. So a couple more to get to here. D-Blaze75 from the message board asks us, who do you think would be the top 2 options to be the head coach of Temple football if it became available today? Follow up, would Al Golden and Matt Rule be consulted on who to interview during a hiring process? Kyle, I'll go to you on this first.
Who knows, man? Like, who knows who's going to be available? Who knows who's going to be interested? Who knows if there's even going to be an opening? I think we just went down the path of saying that there wouldn't be. I'll just say what I've said every time this has come up for the last 3 months. I think if you had the opportunity right now, if this job was open for one reason or the other, and you had the opportunity right now to convince Elijah Robinson to come up from Texas A&M, I think that's a home run hire. I think it would be the situation where Elijah wouldn't be here that long. I think if he was successful, he'd only be here 4 or 5 years and go somewhere else. But I think he'd be an absolute home run hire. You can look at the Panthers staff, choose 6 of them. They would be interested in the job, or at least be a natural fit to the job. A name that I've kind of been coming a little more around to is, it would help if I actually remembered his name when I say things like that. Warren Ruggiero. He's the offensive coordinator at Wake. He's originally a Jersey guy. They're just having a hell of a year in their offense. It looks doing things that nobody else is doing. There was a great article, I think, I think Pete Thamel wrote recently about them. So those are some names, but we have no idea. Every coaching staff, every coaching search that we've ever covered, outside of probably when Rule got the job. When Rule got the job, it was obvious. Like, Rule is the likely candidate here. He's the one that makes the most sense. Steve Adazio, I had really no idea until it starts being a finalist situation. Jeff Collins, same thing. Once it starts becoming a finalist. Jeff Collins, to be honest, I don't think I was aware of him until he got the job. Like, I think the morning of, before it became public, is when I was aware of Jeff Collins. Mm-hmm. Well, and Rod Carey, same thing.
To answer the question about follow up, would Al Golden and Matt Rule be consulted on who to interview during a hiring process? I mean, I can tell you with absolute certainty that Matt Rule has been consulted before. Matt Rule encouraged Temple to interview Jeff Collins. It got to the point where they had interviewed, I think they interviewed Mario Cristobal. They interviewed, or were planning to interview, Charlie Strong, and Matt Rule had said, why don't you take a look at Jeff Collins? I know him from Western Carolina. So I would not be shocked at all if they consulted with Matt on this. Again, I don't know the thought process of Jason Wingard. I don't know the thought process of Arthur Johnson. It would certainly be an intriguing search. I agree with Kyle. Sometimes names pop up. I mean, with the Manny Diaz thing, who knew from the get-go that would happen and that Rod Carey would be landing at Temple? But sure.
You just poured a little salt in people's wounds by reminding them that they interviewed Mario Cristobal and decided to hire Jeff Collins.
Yep. Because he's doing really well there. I don't know, moving along to the next question here. Pretend Temple was invited to the Big 12 with the other American additions. Now pretend you are Arthur Johnson. As a new athletic director of a bad football program, do you ride with Carey into a P5 conference, or do you try to make your mark with the guy of your choosing? Dante?
Oh man. So are we assuming that are we assuming that money is not a problem because we're in the Big 12 now? Is that the assumption?
Yeah, go big on this. Do you stay with Carey or do you go with your own guy?
Oh no, you got to go with your own guy. I honestly like I would go with my own guy regardless of if I'm entering that conference, if like money was not a problem, right? If I didn't have to worry about that component of it. If I'm a new athletic director, why wouldn't I want my own guy, right? Like in any situation, unless I'm inheriting a program that is historically successful with a really good head coach and a really good infrastructure in place, like, I don't think that there's any situation where I wouldn't want my own guy. In this magic scenario, and like, if you're going to the Big 12, like try and go big with it. Like kind of like my answer to the last question was going to be, because John and I had a really long conversation about this yesterday, like off pod, was like, it's got to be like a rural coaching tree guy here. Like that's like where they should try and pick someone out. So I didn't have any specific names, but like that's where I would go with it. Somebody from that tree, somebody who understands how to win here and kind of what, Temple should be on the football field. I think that's the direction they should go. And obviously I would think that Arthur Johnson would want his own guy in any situation.
Kyle?
Yeah, I don't think the conference part matters in this question, to be honest. Like if they're going to the Big 12, I think if Rod Carey wins enough games to justify keeping his job, then he won enough games to keep his job. If they sputter down the line, they go 3-9, and you decide to make a move, I don't think a hypothetical move to the Big 12 matters there. It's either you're the right guy for the job or you're not the right guy for the job. I can also completely agree with what Dante said. Athletic directors are judged off of two things: the hires and whether or not they can get buildings built. So like if you're an athletic director coming in, let's say Rod Carey stays and they go 11-1 next year. That's going to go great. That looks great for your program, but there's also going to be people being like, well, Pat Kraft hired this guy. Look at Pat Kraft hiring a great thing. I think we're naive to think there's not ego involved in every decision. And I think anybody's going to want their own guy in those positions.
Yeah, totally agree. Last question here. Oh, no, sorry. Second to last question. Diamond and Broad is the screen name. Which coach will be back next year? The one whose team gave up 400 yards rushing to one of the worst teams in the country, or the one who lost in 9 overtimes at home on homecoming to a bottom feeder Big Ten school? Of course, he's talking about James Franklin at Penn State versus Rod Carey. For bonus points, which coach has the higher buyout? Thanks for the Schadenfreude, which means the German word for like deriving pleasure on the misfortune of others. So I think James Franklin's buyout is around $4 million. I think I can't confirm this. I think Rod Carey's it's a certain percentage of the remaining part of his salary over the next 2 years. Some people have told me his contract is 5 years. Some people have told me it's 6. I think in that sense, Carey might have the higher buyout. Which coach will be back next year? I guess there's always a better chance that Franklin could come back because he's. Granted, they've disappointed people by losing to Illinois in that crazy 9 overtime game. But James Franklin's probably still on pretty solid footing, and Penn State would probably not want to lose him to USC. So I don't know. I guess I'd say there's a better chance of James Franklin being around, but I don't know. There have been people trying to interpret his body language lately and saying, oh, maybe this is the right year to get out. I'll say Franklin.
You don't hire Jimmy Sexton to stay at your current job.
Good point. It's just about
you hire Jimmy Sexton to find the job that you want to go. Jeff Collins hired Jimmy Sexton, sought out an ACC job, tells this folksy story about I lost reception on the plane, and when I landed, I was the head coach at Georgia Tech. Yeah. You see how that out. Yeah. I think Franklin's gone. Whether it's LSU, whether it's USC, whether it's some job I'm unaware of. I think this is the year they finally make the move. I also think there's uncertainty there. Their athletic director, Sandy Barber's contract's up this summer. Their president's contract is up this upcoming summer. So this is kind of like a tumultuous time at Penn State that I don't think he's going to want to stick around for.
Monte?
I agree, actually. That was going to be my point, is he just hired a new agent. I think he'll be the head coach at USC by the end of the year. If I had to guess, I think that's going to be the job for him. They need to get somebody in there. I don't know if you guys read the piece in The Athletic. I think Bruce Feldman wrote it, I want to say, about kind of the culture that was kind of there. They need somebody. And say what you want about James Franklin's in-game decision-making and play calling and different things like that. Dude recruits his butt off. He's very much the young, hip, up-and-coming head coach. I think they need at USC. So I think they'll write him a blank check at the end of the year. If that's a good decision, I don't know if that would be where I would go with it, but yeah, I actually think there's a higher chance that Rod is back at Temple than James Franklin's back at Penn State.
I know, just real quick, I know Temple fans aren't going to necessarily want to hear this. I feel like people tend to put Penn State at the same level as like Ohio State as far of a job. It is not as good of a job as like an Ohio State or an LSU or stuff like that. So the fact that Franklin's been able to get some of the guys that they've gotten to go there is an accomplishment in itself. So I agree. I agree with Dante. I think his actual game decision might not be great, but that guy can recruit his ass off.
Well, and not only if USC writes him a blank check, not on just his salary, but if they say, hey, look, we're willing to pay whatever for your coordinators. Yeah, when he had Joe Moorhead as his offensive coordinator, boom, they get a lot better. I mean, I forget who their coordinator was when they lost to Temple, but I mean, again, I'm certainly not trying to take anything away from Temple. I mean, 11 sacks, that was a fun game to cover, 27-10. Matt Rule thoroughly outcoached James Franklin. They dominated Penn State that day, and obviously a fun and memorable time for the Temple program to get that first win against Penn State since the early 40s, 41 or 42. But that offense got markedly better once he brought in Joe Moorhead from Fordham. And then, obviously Moorhead parlays that into a head coaching job that he couldn't keep. But I think, might sound like the no kidding statement to make, but I think he's good with good coordinators. But I think if he wants to go there, he'd have to really just say, okay, like I need you guys to open the wallet for me so I can get a knockout offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. As Dante said, he does recruit very, very well. Could use the USC lore out there to make it a good fit. So we'll see. Then we finish up here with a few questions from C. Coyer, Chris Coyer. Some of these are just in jest. Should John Longacre lease the old draft horse and bring something good to campus? Who do we know that's close to Longacre? John Longacre owns the site, owns the South Philly Tap Room, a couple other businesses in the city. I can't say I've talked to John about this. I don't think he has any plans to bring any of his places to Temple, but could be wrong.
The rumor I had heard was that they were going to put Chickies and Pete's in there. Is the rumor I had heard.
I had heard that too, but I have no idea.
I mean, it makes sense. That space can't be used for anything other than like a sports bar.
Yeah.
Like it has to be that.
Yeah. Dante, what would you want to see there?
Honestly, like I live right there. So like I would be down with a bar because like I did not turn 21 pretty much until Drought Horse was already gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, talk to me. What we used to do with the Draft Horse is go there for dinner at 5:30 and then just hang out for 3 hours and then you don't get carded because
I am not confirming or denying whether or not I did that. I am just saying that the 2 weeks that I had to go to Drought Horse before it closed, when I was actually when I actually turned 21 was not that long. So I'd like to see another bar there. I really would. I think it would be cool. It's a good, like Kyle said, it's like a good spot for it. Like I don't like what the heck else are they going to put in there? So yeah, I'd be down for that. Let's do it.
I bought taps from there. I have like victory taps from the Draft Horse in my basement. Yeah. When they liquidated everything in March, I did some like the online auction. So I bought like victory ones, like the victory cherry and white one, the victory like hop devil, and I have them on this little like redwood piece of wood in my bar in my basement.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, good times.
That's good. That's good anecdote.
My wife also once got kicked out of there for stealing beer, so I got a lot of memories.
Sure, Meg is thrilled.
She doesn't care. She would tell that story to anybody. The bartender slammed the tap and broke the tap and it went flying off into Meg's hands. So Meg, getting kicked out of the bar, handed the tap back to the bartender.
Oh my God.
Great bar.
I love it. A couple more questions here from Chris. Another funny one, another somewhat serious one. How many times have the members of the panel been to Insomnia Cookies on campus this fall? Be honest. Zilch for me. Kyle hasn't been really down to campus. Dante, are you a Insomnia Cookie fiend?
So I went once to Insomnia Cookie this year, but it was not the one on campus. So it is also technically a 0 for me.
Yeah, I haven't been on main campus since the Draft Horse, since the beginnings of it. Yeah. But even when I was at Temple, the only girl I ever from when I worked at the tech center, the only random person that I ever went on a date with or whatever worked at Insomnia Cookie. I think that might be the only time I ever went there when I was at Temple. And it was the truck right outside the SAC. I don't know if it still is.
Kyle Gauss, incriminates his wife, talks about one of his ex-girlfriends. Story of the life.
No, I did not use that phrase. I did not use that phrase to describe that person.
That's your opinion. Then Chris asks us, have you been after the new AD Arthur Johnson for a scoop interview? Have been able to yet. I think he officially
doesn't even technically work at Temple.
Doesn't even technically work at Temple yet. But of course, yes, we would love to interview Arthur Johnson. So hopefully we will be able to bring you that interview sooner rather than later. But that'll draw to an end of this edition of The Scoop. We've talked about cookies. We've talked about Meg Gauss. We've talked about speculating about jobs, all sorts of good stuff. We will talk to you guys next week when we will be talking about whether or not Temple has gotten things back on track against UCF, any recruiting news that may or may not develop. So thanks for joining us for another episode this week, and we'll talk to you soon.